Hey everybody, Chris here. Welcome to another episode of Cardboard Dragon Reviews. Today we are taking a look at Lost Cities, which is a card game for 2 players. Takes about 20 to 40 minutes to play and is recommended for ages 13 and up. This game was recently reprinted, so you might see this now with a little different updated cover art. And if you happen to have 2 copies of this game, you can play doubles Lost Cities. But in this game, we are taking on the role of adventurers. We're going on expeditions to the pyramids, under the sea, the Himalayas, the rainforests, and into volcanoes. And we're essentially doing that by laying out these cards and trying to make sequences to score the most points over a number of rounds. So I'm going to go ahead and teach you how to play Lost Cities, which won't take that long. And then I'm going to go ahead and give you my final thoughts on the game. So we'll see you on the other side. Alright, so the first thing we need to do for Lost Cities is decide on a number of rounds that we're going to play for the game. Typically you play over 3 rounds. You can play more or less depending on your preference. But let's just assume we're playing a 3-round game. Next thing we need to do is pick a start player. And from there we need to deal out 8 cards to each player. And these are kept secret. I'm just showing you an example here. An example hand. Now, the cards are typically numbered. There are some special handshake cards that have handshakes at the top. I'll get to those later. Otherwise, they're just numbered between 2 and 10, and they're colored one of the 5 colors of the game: yellow, blue, white, green, or red. So here we have yellow and green cards, for instance. Now, what we're trying to do is lay these cards out in a column here. Each player would lay out their cards on the side of the board that they're facing. So you, for instance, if you were looking at the board from your perspective, would lay your cards out this way. I would lay my cards back here. But just for the ease of video, I will be playing, I guess, from your perspective. So keep that in mind. You never interact with the other people's columns that they're building. So we're trying to build columns of cards in the various colors in sequences, ascending sequences, so from lowest to highest. And that is going to score us points at the end of the round, which the round ends when this deck of cards runs out. So turns are very simple. On your turn, you need to do 2 things, and you need to do them in order. The first thing you need to do is play a card. You have 2 options as to where you play a card. You can either play them on a column of your own, or you can play them onto the pile of the matching colors. So for instance, I have a green 2 here. I could either play this onto my column, or I could play this onto the green pile. Let's say I'll play this on my column. Then the next thing I need to do is draw a card. I can either draw cards that people have played onto the board, or draw from the discard or from the draw pile here. Now, if you were to draw cards that are on the board, you can only take the top card. So I could only take the 8 in this instance, even if I wanted the 2. I'd have to wait another round and hope this was still there to pick it up. Okay, so why do you lay down cards, and what exactly are you trying to do here? So what you're trying to do is lay down ascending columns, as I said. Now, so for instance, if I play a 2 here, I don't necessarily have to play the 3 next. I just need to play a higher card than the 2 on top of it. So I could play my 8 on top of it. Now if I want to build on my column on a later turn, because remember, you can only play 1 card on your turn, you can't play more. I could play either the 9 or the 10. Play the 9, and then on a later turn, I would play the 10. Then this column is done. Once you lay a 10 on a column, there's nothing more you can add to it, and these columns never change. Once a card is played, it's stuck there. So once the deck runs out is when you count your score for your cards. So the way score works, generally, is you count up all the points you have in a column. So the numbers 2 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10, which is 29. And then you take 20 away from that. And it's always taking 20 away. So in this case, I have 29 points minus 20. This column is worth 9 points to my total score. And whoever has the most total score points accumulated at the end of the number of rounds you decide to play will be the winner. Now, if the round ended and this is what my board looked like, I only had this column filled, that's okay. You don't lose points if you don't build anything in a column. So these columns where I have nothing are just worth 0. I don't get negative 20. You don't take 20 points away from an expedition you have not started yet. But the problem is you might end up with something like this. A 2 and an 8. And the round has ended. So you would add those up, 10, and take 20 away from that, negative 10. That's your score for this column. You do score negative points. So that counts against you. Now, there's the special kind of cards I want to show you, and these are the handshake cards. See, they have handshaking at the top there in place of numbers. Now, these count as zeros, you can think of them as. They need to be played before any number cards. So we're going to play one here. This is yellow. And you can add multiple handshake cards on top of each other. But once you play a number, no handshake cards can be added. So if I had started this with a 6, I would not be able to lay a handshake down. Handshakes have to come first. Now what those are multipliers. There are 3 handshakes of every color. The first handshake you lay down multiplies your end total score by 2. The second one by 3, and the third one by 4. And that does it whether your score is positive or negative. So here I have a 9 and a 6, 15 points. Minus 20 is negative 5 and tripled. Negative 15 points I scored for that column there. And then I would add my other columns. And here we already determined I have negative 10. So I would have a total negative 15, negative 10, negative 25 for that whole round. Terrible. But if you get a good amount of columns, or good length of columns, those multiplying handshakes can be really bountiful for you. So essentially, your goal is to make columns adding to greater than 20, or to not start those columns at all if you don't think you're going to be able to complete them. Now there's one other thing. If you can get a column that's 8 cards or longer, including handshakes and numbers, you get 20 points. It's just a flat score, 20 bonus points. They don't get multiplied. They don't count for the negative 20. It's just after you've done the sum of your score, you get an extra 20 points. All right. And that's the whole game. That's how you play Lost Cities. And you'll see when you play this game, there's going to be a lot of cards in the discard pile. And again, the game runs out when this deck of cards runs out. And you are allowed to count how many cards are left. So you can kind of control the flow of the game if you need more time to play your cards by, instead of drawing them off the top of the deck here, drawing even cards you don't necessarily need off the discard pile so you don't eat into this deck, which is essentially the timer for the game. Alright, so that's how you play Lost Cities. Let me go ahead and give you my final thoughts. Alright, final thoughts time for Lost Cities. Very glad this game got reprinted. This is one of the best 2-player games that I own. Certainly one of the best that's for only 2 people. You know, this game reminds me a lot of standard card games, like 52 deck card games. Mostly rummy in a weird sort of way, I don't know. I think that has a lot to do with, you know, being able to score negative points and maybe hoarding cards so other people can't get them and ideas like that. And I think its familiarity to those games, which most people have played, lends itself to being able to be played with people who might not necessarily be into board games or card games. The last person I played this with was my mom, who was in her first game, she beat me. And she caught on very quick. So it's just easy to learn, easy to teach. The hard part is getting the negative 20 into people's heads that, you know, don't start building if you're not going to be able to score at least 20 in the column. So it's hard for me to show this to you, but this game actually gets a little bit vicious in, you know, with the way cards are discarded, because you don't want to play cards because you don't want people to know what you're going for, because you're hoping that they're going to discard cards that you need. For instance, this guy holding the green cards here might not want to lay out the 2 because he's hoping this person here is going to lay out the 5 and the 6 for green because he'd really like to get the green cards. But if he does lay out the 2, then this guy over here who's holding those cards might say, oh, I'm going to starve this player of these green cards and hope that they get negative points. So it's a little bit mean in that sense. You can't really directly attack anybody or interact with them in that way, but that's a little mean. I know my wife doesn't like this game for that reason. But you know, I think it's really good. I like that part of the game. It brings an element of strategy to this game and an element of bluffing in a kind of weird sort of way. I really like the deck mechanic a lot, of being able to control the tempo of the game by counting how many cards are left, and instead of taking cards off the top, if you need more turns, you take junk cards off the discard pile even if you don't need them, just so you don't burn through this deck. And on the opposite end, if you want to pressure your opponents, you're just pulling cards off here no matter what. That's really cool. I like that a lot. As far as my complaints for the game, I don't really have a whole lot. I think some of the artwork could maybe be better, but the cards are pretty cool. If you lay them side by side, they form in order, in sequence. They form like a mural, which is pretty neat. But some of it's a little eh. The board is okay in that it's just here really, though. It's not very functional. It's just to designate what colors things are and where they go. You do not need this board play this game at all, but it's an okay thing to have. So this game's an 8 out of 10 for me. And again, if you've seen my reviews, I like games with a little more meat on them, but for the amount of time that this game takes and for the price point, it's awesome. And like a lot of those old standard 52 deck of card games, in a way it's timeless. You could play this game over and over again and have a really good time with it. It feels like one of those classic card games to me. Now there is a way to play doubles with this if you have 2 sets of cards. I've never done it and I'd like to try it, but I don't know anybody else who owns this game. So, but just as a 2-player game, it's a lot of fun. It's really neat. It says recommends for ages 13 and up on this. I think you could get younger kids to play this, and I think it would actually be a really good exercise for them in their mathematics. They're adding and multiplying, and subtraction too, I guess, if they're having a bad time, subtraction. But, yeah, overall, this is a really fantastic game. If you're looking for a 2-player game that's easy to play, that's not too complicated, and especially if you're looking for a game to play with people who have experience with games like Rummy or Crib or those kind of classic games, I definitely recommend Lost Cities. If you're looking for some kind of deep game, it's not really here, but there is a pretty decent amount of strategy in this game. It is not all luck of the draw. It's a lot of denying people what they need, and actually a lot of bluffing in a weird sort of way. And it's hard, again, for me to show that to you without playing the game, but once you play, you will see the bluffing and the deception and the stabbing in the back that you will do to people. So, Lost Cities, 8 out of 10 for me. Again, this is the older version. There's a new version. I think this artwork is the same from what I've seen, but the box artwork is different. But, I mean, for the price point, this is a really great game. So, 8 out of 10, highly recommended. And until next time, this has been Chris for Cardboard Dragon Reviews. Keep your dice on the table.